Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today is one of my favorite kinds of cards to make, and that's one that comes together quickly. So I do love a fun technique, and the possibilities are pretty endless with this one. The best part is you kind of need to rummage through your stash and find an embossing folder that is going to work well. We are going to be embossing some vellum, and I prefer to use the Lawn Fawn one. This is a little bit heavier. It's a 36-pound vellum, and I love this one because I can do heat embossing, I can do dry embossing, I can do all sorts with it, and I know it's going to hold up to all of that. So these come in big sheets. I'm just going to cut down roughly to what I think I'm going to need to use today. A little bit of eyeballing as per usual, because if I can avoid measuring, you know I will. And I have out 3 folders that I think I could kind of make work for today. Actually, the middle one is more of a background, but I ended up not using it. I'm going to show you using this one here. This is the Fanciful Flowers by Creative Expressions. Now, what I want is to be able to cut away some of the pattern. So I have another one that's got the big bold flowers on, the Altenew one in the background, and that one would also work too. When I looked through my stash, I kind of found quite a few. I mean, given that I only have, I think, 7 or 8 embossing folders, I found that lots of them would work. So anything with a pattern that you think you can kind of cut some away from. Now, you'll see in just a minute exactly what I mean. This is very straightforward and very easy. Now, this pattern is probably one of the more busy or complex patterns when it comes to cutting it away, but you'll see how it all comes together very, very easily. I love cards that come together quickly. You can really go as far or as limited as you want to with these, and that's what I love. So to run this through my machine, I did need to cut off that extra little piece of vellum, but you'll see why that won't matter in just a minute. Now, I did kind of angle my vellum in there so that I would get the pattern piece that I wanted. Now, I kind of have to look, but you can see there is one that goes from the bottom right to the top left, and there's kind of a branch, a leaf, I'm not sure what you want to call it, but I'm going to follow that line all the way up with my fussy cutting scissors. Now, I have some little Cutter-Bee scissors. These have been going strong for, I don't know, 6, 7 or so years. These were the first ever pair of fussy cutting scissors that I bought, and they are still brilliant, and I still love them, and I wouldn't change away from them. It is very helpful to have a little fine-tipped pair of scissors for this. As I said, this pattern is actually quite busy and I guess intricate. Well, not super intricate, just busy. So it is good to be able to kind of angle all those cuts. Now, I know at the minute it looks kind of funny, but we have created a gorgeous edge there that's going to go on our card. Now, to create a very quick background, this is the part where I think you can either go small or go wild. I am going to use 3 Distress Oxides. I have chosen to use some mustard seed, some wild honey, and some spiced marmalade. This is just going to give me a nice gradient from a yellow to an orange. Now, I must admit, I have secrets to getting the perfect blend. Number one is using the domed foam blenders. This is what I find easiest. I know lots of people find the brushes easiest. However, brushes and I just don't get along together, and I've come to accept that. Number 2 is using the Tim Holtz watercolor paper as my base here. This is the absolute gold to me getting smooth blending. Then it really is just a matter of going back and forward, and sometimes going between the colors, but in my opinion, this is a pretty smooth blend. This didn't take me very long, probably a minute or so maximum, and I did put a little bit of mint tape on my fingers just so I wouldn't get any transfer of the ink, because obviously it hasn't dried yet, and that way I won't get fingerprints in my finished piece. So I'm just going to put this aside for a minute to dry, and whilst I do that, I have these dies here from Hero Arts. This is the Celebrate Words Fancy Dies. Again, today's video is really just giving you the baseline. You can use this for any occasion. You could create a much more in-depth background. You could create so much more going on. So I'm just going pretty simple today. I have a scrap piece of card here that was cut off maybe a slimline card that I maybe created. I can't remember. And so I may as well use it. It has got a bend in the middle, but that's a-okay. I chose to go with Best Wishes for today. And just to make life easy, because I love these scripty dies, I'm going to add some Stick It double-sided adhesive to the back of these. This means that I'm just going to be able to peel and stick when it comes to putting all these layers together for my sentiment. Now I just peel off a tiny wee corner there in the top right hand corner, then I line it up, stick that down, and then I'm able to peel the rest of the release paper, and this will line up perfectly with the little rectangle that I have that I need it to go behind. Give it a good press down, although this is going to go through a die cutting machine lots of times, so it's going to get plenty of pressure. Then I'm just going to do this to get a little bit more dimension on my sentiment. As I said, this is a very simple card, so smaller details can often make a difference. And I just decided to go ahead and make as many as I could, cut as many as I could out of this piece of paper, because I've gone to the effort so far of putting the sticker on the background. So I ended up being able to get 4 of each word out of this, which is great because that will make a beautiful thick sentiment. Now the fun part about this is that all I have to do is peel off the back, the release paper off the back of the Stick It, and then I am able to pop these together. With the Stick It adhesive, it is absolutely so thin that it's going to go through a die cutting machine beautifully, and it means that you can, when you stick it together, you can kind of move it around a little bit, and then when you press down really hard, it becomes nice and permanent. Then, as usual, I am going to cut down my front panel. I started off with a 4 1/4 by 5.5 panel, and I'm cutting this down to be 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I just like this size. It tends to give a very nice thick white border around the edge, and this way I can just kind of pick and choose what I would like to include. Now, mine is obviously pretty subtle. The ombre effect there is pretty subtle, so the background is not going to kind of outshine anything. Now I'm using these little speckles. These are like thousands and thousands of micro dots of adhesive. So I'm still using these a few times. I've had most people that commented in my recent video said they loved these. They absolutely loved them. And there were a couple that said they found them tricky to use. I'm still enjoying them, I think, and I'm still going to keep using them. They are very handy when it comes to things like adhering vellum, which can often be tricky. So it really has been good for this, I must say. Now, I'm just going to adhere this down onto my card front at the moment. Then I'm able to trim off all of the extra. It's not perfectly even, and that just means I was able to kind of line it up exactly how I wanted. So I can cut away all of the edges. That's the perks of making the panel a little bit bigger, the vellum panel a little bit bigger than what I originally needed. And then I decided to round the corners just because I think this finishes off the card. It gives a little bit of a nice soft touch to it as well. And then I'm going to do a couple of things from here. So one is obviously I'm going to pop my little sentiment there. It's going to go down in the bottom left hand corner. It's bright white, so it's definitely going to stick out. I take off the back layer of the release paper, and again, because until I press down, when that will become permanent, so I can move these around until then. So I just move them around, look where they kind of, do I sit them right down in the corner, or do I pop them up a little bit? And I like them up just a little bit. Then from here, I am going to adhere this down onto my card base. My card base is going to be 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I am going to adhere it down by popping my 4 little tabs out, and then I have a piece of adhesive in the center. And that way I can get everything nice and lined up before I commit to where it's going to go. Then I pull out my tabs and it is perfectly centered. Now this next part is very optional. I'm going to use some of the Dina Wakley gloss spray. Now I actually only have hers in the white. That's the only one I have, and the reason that I love this ink is because even when you spray on a water reactive ink, for example the oxides that I've used in the background, it is going to stay white when it dries. Usually if I put something like even glossy accents or another white, like white distress or picket distress inks or whatever it is that they have, picket fence, they are all going to react with the ink underneath and take up that new color. So these would become yellow spots, which would be fine. But I have found that the Dina Wakley gloss spray in white stays nice and white. And of course it is meant to be a spray, but if you just take the thing out of the bottle and then flick it, it gives a perfect splatter. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you give this technique a go, and I'm sure you have everything to make it happen. Other than that, supplies will be listed below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!